Okay, so we're talking about free will, right? I'm taking the
Yep.
position that it does not exist. Causal determinism. That's my position. But first, I want to clarify, like, what do you mean by free will? Like, what is your definition of free will?
Okay, so I'm not gonna use like big words because I don't really use those. But basically, free will to me is basically just like being able to make your own choices without having to like worry about someone controlling you basically without it being you. If you know what I mean, basically it's you like the consciousness in your brain or your mind. That's what's controlling your actions. That's what free will is. Like no one's controlling you. You
Okay.
can make your own choices. Yeah.
I have a question. I just want to create a distinction because do you think in free will, right? If let's say you have free will, if I were to rewind your life and erase your memories, since you have free will, could you have chosen different actions and made different decisions?
I mean, yeah, you could choose a different because I feel like if you rewinded someone's and like you said remove their memories, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you did that, uh, if they went, if every action they made is the same as the ones they made previously, I feel like that would be fate, which
Okay.
to me isn't free will. Yeah.
In my belief is of determinism, I believe that everybody would make the same action. Like I believe that free will does not exist, and if your life was rewinded, you would make the same decisions as your previous life. That's my position. Just to clarify. Okay. So like now, actually getting into like my argument, I'm taking an affirmative position. So I'll make the claim, right? You have to defend free will. You don't have to prove it. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, just here's the rebuttal. So I'm just gonna ask questions. I'm gonna start. So first off, when you said that free will, your definition of free will is your conscious decision to do something. What is consciousness? Is it a physical thing or a non-physical thing?
I mean, it wouldn't make sense for it to be physical. So,
Why why wouldn't it make sense for it to be physical? What do you define consciousness as? First off.
right. Okay. So to me, like consciousness is basically just like how do I for example it's basically just something that basically it controls your action. But if I'm trying to like define what it is, I would say it's like uh I guess it's like commands inside your brain basically.
Hmm.
It's not. I feel like it wouldn't be in the physical world basically. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Um. So when you mean commands inside your brain, uh, I'll say this. I'm gonna give a definition of consciousness and see if you agree to it. Would you say consciousness would be a personhood, like a personality, like your consciousness or your conscious self is like your personality, I guess, that has defining
Yeah.
features and traits. Your
Yeah. I feel like
identity. Would you say
yeah.
that?
You're like yeah. Yeah. Basically. Yeah.
And
It's
and your
basically yeah.
and your
Basically your identity.
identity and your identity would include your thoughts and your emotions, right?
That's
Okay,
basically you. Yeah.
okay. So if there's physical evidence. There's evidence that demonstrates that thoughts and emotions are correlated to your brain. Like the brain injuries can change how you think and feel, right? So this is demonstrable correlations between what you define as consciousness and a physical brain. So how this like would lead to the conclusion that consciousness is contingent on some type of material substance, not immaterial, like you in your position.
I
Like
mean, I feel like
we.
my explanation,
Mm-hmm.
my explanation, it might sound like crazy, right? But I'm just gonna defend my position. I would just say like since the brain is damaged, I would just argue that your consciousness basically resides in your brain, right? And because your brain is damaged, it's not able to be, it's not able to, how do I say? Imagine like you're like, imagine like an island is the brain, right?
Uh huh.
And then there's like a non-physical whatever non whatever it's called, right? It's basically controlling. It's making the island basically do whatever. Like the island is the brain. Let's say the ocean is a body, whatever, and it's making it control the body, right? So if a part of the island is destroyed or it's affected and changed from what it was prior, then the whatever is controlling it would not be able to make it make the same actions, since it would not be what it used to be. So
Okay.
the brain being like damaged, right? The consciousness would not be able to utilize it as the same as it was. It's changed in some way.
Okay. How would you justify that consciousness is some type of immaterial essence residing in the physical brain? Like, what evidence can you use to demonstrate that as true? So we can use that belief to build your position.
Um,
Because
I mean, I feel like
because
you
bi-
couldn't really have like justifiable I guess knowledge or proof of it, since to me consciousness, since it's not you cannot, like, how do I say, if you know how someone, would you agree that if someone's brain how do I say got cut in half, they would actually never mind. If you Do you agree that if someone's brain got destroyed, they would not be able to function, right? That would basically dying. The
yeah,
brain would stop working.
yeah, I would agree to
Okay,
that.
so the brain to me is basically something that's, it's how do I say it? Sending commands, right? Like how I said prior,
Can I
kind of.
pause you
It's
for a
basically
second?
telling.
Can I pause you for a second?
Mhm, mhm.
Um, in your original explanation of consciousness, you said consciousness is a voice that's sending commands. Now you're saying a brain is something that sends commands. It's kind of the
Yeah,
same. It's
I'm saying like
similar, right?
yeah, I'm saying like the consciousness sends those commands to the brain. The brain executes them.
Okay. Oh, okay. So yeah, that's what I was looking for. What is your justification of an inner essence within the physical brain that is non-physical? How can you justify that an existent thing or a non-existent concept? How would you do that?
I mean, I feel like that would be the most logical assumption.
Why?
Basically, it's other.
Based on what logic?
Alright, so if you destroy like the brain, right? They would stop functioning. They'll basically
Wait, I have a
be dead.
question. I have a question. It's the
Hmm?
most logical assumption, but it presupposes something. It presupposes that something non-physical and something physical can causally interact. Because in order for something to have a cause and effect, as in a deliver in commands, there needs to be some causal interaction. How can there be causal interaction between a physical and non-physical thing when they're opposite, like logically opposites? They're in negation.
I mean, if you're the consciousness would basically just be like I said, commands, right? How would commands really be physical? So them
Well,
sending those
what I'm
commands
saying
to the
here is
brain.
they're sending the commands to a physical thing, and physical things react causally to physical things. As in, if I were to affect a physical thing, I need to physically interact with it, right? How can something non-physical physically interact with something? It would have to be physical and not physical at the same time, and that's a contradiction. So
I
the
mean,
you saying it's the
if
most logical assumption when it's presupposed upon a contradiction. It cannot be the most
I
logical
mean,
assumption.
if you are you trying to basically say if something that's non-physical try to make contact with something that's physical, nothing will basically happen, since they're not.
What I'm saying here is physical things need physical interaction to create causation, right? Right. Physically, I knock over my phone, right? I need something physical to move it. And so
But I feel.
the brain is something physical, right? So in order for it to receive these commands would need to be sent physically from something else. But you said consciousness
I
is
feel like
some
it would be different.
non-physical essence. So how can this non-physical essence interact with the brain?
I feel like it would be different though, since
You saying you
um
feel like it would be different doesn't really matter. That's just kind of
Let
like
me let me explain. Let me
that's an
explain.
argument from incredulity.
Let me explain it. Basically,
Mm.
the thing you said with the something that's not physical cannot interrupt something that's physical. Basically, if a car hits a wall, it would either break the wall, you break the wall and it would damage itself, right?
Mm.
But in this case, uh, when that happens, the wall is being, how do I explain? It's being since energy can only be like changed like a different whatever, right? It would not really be completely removing it, but it would be changing how it is and destroying a part of it, right? But with
Mm-hmm.
the brain, when they send the command, it's not really like making the brain like, how do I say? It's not utilizing a force to push the brain and make the brain do something. It's a command would be different from like a physical force. So it wouldn't really. I feel like
So
it wouldn't really
so
be like the same
so
thing.
so you're saying here is a non-physical command can causally affect a physical thing with
It would make the thing do that.
make
It would not. It would not be doing it itself. When like when I
well
said when the car hit the wall. When I said the car hit the
okay,
wall,
okay, now my question here is how can you prove this?
I mean that would basically be the explanation I would give. I mean,
But
I guess.
you giving an explanation isn't proving the explanation though. Like what
I mean, I
evidence?
feel like that wouldn't that really be the most like as I said before the most
No,
logical assumption.
it's not a logical assumption because it just presupposes the truth of some of a contradict of a no the falsity of a contradiction. It presupposes the
I mean,
falsity of the contradiction.
I feel like I gave a good example of how something that's non-material can interact with something that's
You you
not really interact, but
you said
making it
it just makes it happen. That's what you said. Saying
the
it
command. The command would basically, how do I say?
just make
It
it
would
happen.
not
That's what
make
you said. Now
it would make the thing make, yeah, yeah, yeah.
saying it would just make it
I know.
happen is just insufficient justification. It's not enough evidence to support your claim. What I'm saying here is like we can't just say prove something exists and you say it just exists. Something just makes it exist. We can't say it just makes it happen. We know consciousness exists because it just makes our decisions. We can't assume that. That's a presupposition. And what I'm saying here is, what evidence do you have justifies that presupposition of it just makes it happen?
All right, so I'm gonna make like a something to like support it, right? An argument to support it. Basically, well, I guess this depends on what you say, but would you say like a voice is like physical?
Yes.
Why would you say that?
We can physically measure voice, volume. You can hear me. Like everything is based off by I don't know the word to this anatomy of my body. We know what causes the sound. Everything is completely physical. A physical process. A voice is a physical process. Um,
Okay, but let me. So would the voice have like a mass or like
a mass.
or being able to be touched basically? Yeah.
It doesn't need to be touched to be physical.
I mean, if it's not,
Do you know
wouldn't
what?
that make it?
No. Do you know what I mean by physical?
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Physical as in spatial, as in like it can interact with tangible things physically, as in like let's say light for example. Light doesn't actually have mass, but it can be reflected off things with mass. So I still think light is a part of matter. I think light is a material thing, right? I think sound waves are material. I think gravity is something that's a material function. I think space itself, outer space, is a material function, right? That's what I think. And I'm a neuroscientific productionist. So I think that consciousness is just a function of brain activity. It's physical. I think thoughts in our head are physical based off brain activity, and there's like correlative studies that show that. There's people who have done experiments where they've cut brains in half, and there's two different personalities to go with each half, right? So it's just there's more evidence. There's a preponderance of evidence for neuroscientific reductionism, and your position is solely based on one presupposition that is unjustifiable. It's literally unjustifiable. And that's what I want to make you realize. You're just saying it just makes it happen. There's this thing that's an essence and that's non-physical that can somehow interact with our brain that gives it commands that just make it happen. And there's no other way to justify that. There's not enough evidence compared to the preponderance for neuroscientific reductionism to believe that. I don't even know if you're still here. It's like I was talking for a minute.
Hey, I'm still here.
Okay. So yeah, you can give your point now. My bad for talking for like so long. I'm like high as shit right now. Sorry.
What was this? What did this like come from? This point. Was it like
Oh, basically, you were trying to say that um the consciousness is like this non-physical inner essence thing that commands our brains to make our decisions. It just makes it happen. There's no like tangible process to this, but that's impossible just based off how causality works. So you don't.
so you would be arguing that it is physical? Just
Yeah,
thinking
and there's more evidence for it being physical than your position, and I've asked you for it. The like what proves that assumption you have, that one presupposition, your foundational
uh
assumption.
since since I don't have like really any evidence to support that, I would just like I would give this point up and basically just ask you how does this support your argument?
Okay. So if consciousness is a physical thing, and consciousness dictates our actions, like in your position, because it's something that commands us. We know this is just a part of our brain, and we know physicality relies on causality because we are affected by time. Would you agree that we're temporal? We exist in time.
Hmm?
Okay. So that means that decisions are from past to present then future. Okay. So that's synonymous to a conditional, right? And a if P then Q. So in order for the event, let's say event X, in order for event X to happen, like my birth, my parents must have met. So if my parents never met, I would have never been born. If P then Q, right? That's just a causal sequence of events which flow like basically time. So now if we change P, the antecedent, then the consequent will be different. So that means these things must be determined. As in, if I were to rewind your life and everything were to go back to the way it was, like however old you are, 20 years old or whatever, I don't know how old you are, right? 20 years ago, and we were to press play, your life would make the exact same decisions if we left all the circumstances the same, because all the antecedents would lead to the all the same consequence. All the P's would lead to all the same Q's, right? And that's just like basic logic. Like it's just completely, it entails it. The past would entail the future,
I'll,
essentially.
I'll make my last point. I can't really think of anything else other than this. Basically, would you say something that an item, for example, like a bed, has a consciousness?
No.
So the thing about rewinding time and seeing if the things play out the same,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you would probably think the same, but things that have no consciousness,
They would do the same thing as well.
but if they don't have consciousness, they would.
They would
Wait,
do.
what was I trying to say?
They would do the same things as well. All the same things that affect all the causes that affected their existence. Like let's say there's a rock outside that got hit by another rock that got hit by another rock and just traveled distances, right? All those causes would be the same. So if it was created in the same circumstances and had all the same causes for different effects throughout its entirety of its existence, it would have the same existence because nothing changed.
So
All the
are
influences
you
are the same.
are you saying that in this hypothetical like situation where you rewind someone with their time, are you saying that every single thing, every event happens exactly the same?
Yes. Yes.
Uh, I can see that. I don't know. I don't
Okay.
know how to like.
All right. So, good debate. I was like, I felt like I was talking a lot, and I was getting lost on points because like I was rambling. And I was like,
You didn't overtalk me, so it
I'm
wasn't really. It was a good.
I'm kind of high right now, so I was kind of like a lot.